So I'm going to talk about mobile strategy optimization. So now that your company or yourself probably have decided that you need an API, what next? How do you go about it? What would be your API strategy? So I would be talking about that. Before that, I would like to tell something about ourselves. We are Teksmobile. What we do, we build APIs, we build mobile apps, and we are doing that from last 10 years. And we've built close to about 1,000 apps and a lot of APIs. In fact, each of the app requires an API. So we built all these in the last 10 years. So as two of our previous speakers, they were saying that, that time there were no specific word called API. So we've been doing API, but we really don't know that we were doing kind of APIs. We were sharing text files and comma-separated value files and stuff like that. So yeah, we've been doing that. Okay, so basically, when you want to start with building an API, why do you need an API? You need to ask your company, why do we need an API? Is it something that you have been hearing from too many other competitors or too many other people talking about you need an API, so let's go and build an API? No. So how an API strategy, you need to ask yourself a question, your company a question. How an API strategy would help your core product or your service? Is it going to help you in a way to digitally transform yourself, or is it just going to be like, just a new thing or a new cutting technology that you have heard about? No. So you have to ask that question. How they are going to complement to your business? So if you're building an API, why do you need it? Is it going to complement to your business? Is it going to add value to your business? The third question is there a demand or is just a hype? Do you have a demand for an API? Does your consumer or your user, the user can be an internal user or an external user. Does your user need an API? So you need to ask it. So these are the three questions before you need an API. You need to ask your company or yourself. Now we come to understanding the API value chain. So now that you have, you have gathered the insight that yes, we do need an API. So next thing is understand the API value chain. Perform a cost analysis. The cost analysis can be broken down into probably like 3 parts. The tools and platforms that you are going to use, the people that are going to use and build this API. The third thing is the infrastructure. Whether you're going to invest in this kind of infrastructure. The last thing that you need to consider is the return on investment. That is, obviously, every business has to know that. Either it brings money back investment, or money back on the return of investment, or does it add a brand value to your product? Like a value-added service. So you need to decide on what kind of ROI you are going to get. Coming to next is the technology. So as an API strategy, you need to be very, very thorough with the technology that you're going to use. So the first thing is investing. Are you going to invest in an already made product, or are you going to build it something custom in-house? So this is the question you are supposed to ask your team, because there are a lot of platforms available, there are a lot of tools available which you can reuse out of the box. But is this something that you need? You need to discuss it out. Or, let's get existing developers to build the APIs ourselves. That is the question. Second thing is, are you going to balance your investments? How you're going to balance your investment? Are you going to balance your investments in people? That means hiring more resources to build the APIs, or you are going to hire, putting the money in more infrastructure and the tools. So you've got to balance it out. You've got to hire the right people as well, and then you've got to hire the right tools also. So that's the balance that you're going to. Before jumping on to any of the conclusions, you have to build a MVP to evaluate different platforms, because there are, probably tens of products available. Many of the products are downstairs, which you can take a look. But the most important thing is you have to build an MVP to evaluate which product is going to suit you the best. Because each API company, deploying an API, their strategy has to be different from each other. It's not a, kind of a template of a strategy that you can apply to each company. It has to be different towards, each implementation. Lastly, don't hurry in choosing. The technology should take the right amount of time. No matter if it takes some more time than anticipated, give it a time. Let the MVP come up. Let the statistics grow. Then you need to choose your right technology. Next, we come to consumer-centric. You have to build your APIs which are consumer-centric. Do not build APIs just as a fashion. Who are your consumers? Your consumers are your developers, because APIs are going to be consumed by your developers. So take consumers' developer feedback. Just don't force your API. So, like the management decides that we're going to have an API and the top-level architects decides that we're going to have an API. Don't force it. Take their feedback. Take the developer support, what they want. How would it be easier for them to implement the APIs? Second thing is identify the role of everybody in the API program. So let's say you're building a new API system in your company. You have to identify who is doing what. Otherwise, you're going to have a big communication problem in making decisions. Third thing is plan the API lifecycle. The API lifecycle is really important for any company, and also the end of life, so that everybody in the company or your users know that when your APIs are going to be outdated. Because I can take an example of Facebook. Facebook has API versions. They have end of life cycles every 2 years, which is very good. All the developer community knows that when their APIs are going to be deprecated. So it's really important that you communicate clearly the API plan and the life cycle of the API. Okay, so now we come to more planning. So when you're already into the phase of development, how do you do more planning? You have to shorten the API development lifecycle. So if your APIs are too many and too big, you have to have small little batches of APIs, and then you deploy them, so that your developer, I should say the consumer, should be able to feel that they're getting continuous APIs rather than them having to be waiting for a very long time. You need to take an agile approach there. So that's the second thing. The third thing is focus on building APIs first. In this conference, we've been, a lot of talk has been going on API security, and, people or companies, they talk about API security first rather than building the APIs. So yeah, that is really, really important. But what you need to focus is that you need to build the API first, rather than just talking about security. Security can be added as another layer, and yes, it has to be added. It is a mandatory thing, but you just don't have to talk about security all the time. You have to talk about the APIs first. Okay, so that was a quick thing. You can see more of the tips and some things on my blog, on my company blog. You can also email me. I also wrote a quick, not a quick, but a very long blog on 13 tips on how to optimize your API strategy. So there's long things which you can go and have a look at it. So that's it from my side, and I thank you everybody for your time.